Welcome to the HawkCast with your host, AJ Hawk.
Breer is with us right now. Albert's a professional broadcaster, journalist, everything. So appreciate you coming on here, Albert, and giving us some time. I know you just had a little baby. You've been recently hacked on Twitter. You've had all kind of stuff. You've made a change in your job, and so it's a busy time for you. So thanks for making the time.
You got it. I mean, if people have been following me on Twitter, they might think I'm launching a porn career too. So don't forget about that.
Yeah. So I heard you on the Barstool guys. Pardon my take. You called in and talked about it. Like, when did you realize that you'd been hacked on Twitter?
It was funny. I was actually. So you said we just had the kid. He was 2 days old. So we were in the maternity ward of the hospital, and so it was me, and it just so happened to be. You got people visiting and everything else, the days after your kid's born. So it was me, my mom, my dad, my brother, my uncle, my wife, and my 2-day-old. And, I just happened to pull my computer over and was checking my email or whatever. And all of a sudden I looked down at like the internet browser or whatever that's open. And it's like, I don't know if I can swear here.
Yeah,
but
whatever you want, man.
I was, holy shit, like what the hell's going on? And I had like all of a sudden I look and I see a tweet and it's like I'm like thinking, okay, is that like a fake me or something like that? And then another one comes. And then all of a sudden I'm just like what's going on? And my phone, it's like ding, 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 ding. Everybody thinking they're the first one to tell me that I got hacked. And so, the scary thing was that I tried to change my password. And that's the first thing I think anybody do. And it didn't do any good. So I changed it again and it didn't do any good. So eventually I called my company, got them to shut down the Twitter account. I couldn't get back in for 3 or 4 hours. But you know what you're thinking is, you're thinking like I hope that like it's a guy like no one actually thought that was me. You know what I mean? So the only thing you're really worried about is like, I hope that guy doesn't have access to other things that are a little more serious than my Twitter account. So I don't know. I mean, at the end of it, I thought it was kind of funny and whatever. I mean, Look, how many athletes have been they say something stupid on social media, then they claim they were hacked, and we all make fun of them. Well, now I was actually hacked, so I can't make fun of anybody anymore.
Was that one of your initial thoughts, like thinking, oh, man, now I can't ever even ask a guy about, or I can't claim that he –
yeah,
that's
like shit.
That's
right.
That's the defense now.
Yeah.
No matter what, I was hacked. You see these politicians or coaches, Bobby Petrino was liking some porn site or something.
Yeah, and he probably had no idea what he was doing. Thought nobody could see it, but half of America's looking at it within a couple of hours. So yeah, I guess I totally lost it. That's the one thing that happened. Like the one thing that's actually come of this is that I was stripped of my ability to make fun of people for claiming they got hacked.
Well, for you, the good thing is it was so absurd, and the tweets were multiple things about wanting to become a porn star and like thanking,
yeah.
Like weren't they like direct mentioning like actual porn stars saying thanks for the scene or something?
Yeah, there was one girl who I sort of know but don't really know on Twitter. And I think I was suddenly hitting on her, and so there was all kinds of weird stuff happening. And I mean, it's not like I had to go back and apologize to anybody. There was one thing where I think that the guy actually tweeted, we regret to inform you that Albert Breer has passed away. Right. So it's like if you really want to try to pull that off, jackass, maybe you shouldn't have buried it under 30 porn tweets. You know what I mean? Like they probably could have pulled that off, and that would have been really fucked up. But I mean, following the 30 porn tweets probably ruined it. So. I mean, it was an interesting experience, and maybe in 18 or 20 or 22 years or whenever it's appropriate, I can tell my kid that, when he was 2 days old, he was about 5 feet away from all that.
Well, I think I would think you'd be a little bit relieved that they did go so far with it, because like you said, if they would have just said a couple tweets here and there, but they weren't really that absurd, people wouldn't believe your defense that you were hacked.
Wasn't really a good way of pulling it off now, was it? Bad job by the hacker. The hacker could have done a much better job of selling it instead of just going crazy like that. But he did get attention. So if he was looking to get attention, then, I mean, mission accomplished.
Is there any way for Twitter or anyone to go find out who it was?
I don't know. They may have already. I mean, I don't know. I know the same guy got I think it was the same guy got Frank Caliendo. So I guess Frank Caliendo was doing an impression of me unintentionally, right? So I mean, he got him. I don't know how that works, whether or not they investigate people or whatever. But the guy seemed to be like proud of it. He had, I can't remember it was Mister something, whatever his handle was, and I mean, he seemed to be really proud of what he did. So the name was out there and everything else. And I would think like Twitter would have a way of figuring out who that is, right? Like I would think, I don't know. I mean, I can't even remember signing up for my Twitter account. It was like 7 years ago, so I don't remember what information you give them. But yeah, maybe they caught him. I don't know.
Well, yeah, it had to be pretty interesting. I can't believe when you called in to that Pardon My Take and you said, well, yeah, the funny thing is I'm actually in the hospital now and just had a baby. And I'm like, man, what a poor time to realize you've been hacked. That's everybody's nightmare, to look down and see a million texts like, uh-oh, what happened? What got out?
The timing actually wasn't that bad, though, if you think about it, AJ, because the timing could have been so much worse. Because, like, what if it's like during one of those times when you literally like you've been there when you're having a kid? There are times when you literally couldn't do anything about it. So at least it was like at a point when I was in front of my laptop and okay, I can make a couple calls and take care of it. What if it's like, what if I was in like, you know, the operating room or something like that? You know what I mean? Like whatever it is, like I could have been somewhere where I couldn't have taken care of it. So I guess I wasn't all that unlucky.
Yeah.
And I mean, I got the sympathy there. Everybody's like, "Oh, he's having a kid." You know what I mean? So I guess everybody knows who my second son is now by for the fact that he was born in the middle of me being hacked.
Yeah, that's I'm sure everyone is always worried about. That's the thing I start to worry about when I saw your situation. I'm like, man, do I need to change some passwords? And then I started to realize I don't even remember some of my passwords of accounts like that have been logged in for so long. So any of us that could happen too. But it came shortly after. So when did you officially join the Monday Morning Quarterback?
So that was in June. That was June 1st. My last day at NFL Network, end for me at NFL Network. The way it works with a lot of these things is like, you decide, okay, I'm going to this new job, and then you live out your contract, but you're not really doing as much at the end of your contract. So that was kind of it. It was like end of April. Then for most of May, I was still under contract at NFL Network, and then I started June 1st at Monday Morning Quarterback.
So how does that work for that month of May? Did you still go out on site and do interviews and report from places?
It's pretty awesome. I was just kind of off getting paid. I hate to say it, but I was. I mean, I was just like I took my wife to Nantucket for her birthday, and I went and visited one of my buddies in Florida. I went and visited one of my buddies in Atlanta. It's just, I was out of one place and I wasn't into the other place yet. And like, outside of vacations, I've kind of just been constantly going since I was in college. I never took like time off at all. And so it was nice to have like this period of time that I think a lot of people have when they get out of college, where it's just like, you give yourself a couple months not to give a shit about anything. So I kind of had that, like I had a month of that, which was good. And, in the end, it kind of like, I think like when you get back too, it was kind of like, all right, like I'm really ready to go back after this again because I've been away for a little while.
Now, what is so the Monday Morning Quarterback, is that still affiliated with Sports Illustrated?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And so, Peter had been talking to me for a while about like the idea of doing it. And obviously it's his operation. And, a huge part of my job is getting like the video part of it off the ground. I think one of the things is, and I've always more recently been interested in like the business side of things and how all of that works. And so, I think this kind of gave me a chance to go somewhere and affect change. And I think anybody in the media knows, like, as much as people huff and puff about the future of football, and the NFL is going to be popular for the foreseeable future, and so I think what we do is going to be popular. The content that we have is going to be popular. How it's going to be delivered is, what we don't know what that's going to be in 5 years. We don't know how the kid who's 16 now is going to be 21 then. We don't know how they're going to consume it. And so the great part about this job for me is that I'm going to kind of have a say in pushing things forward, and I have had a say in pushing things forward and getting our video operation going and getting some other things going where, we're not going to allow ourselves to be what a newspaper was in 1997, where, all right, like we're going to cling to this one thing the way that we've always done it. we're gonna move forward and do things a different way. And so having kind of a say in moving something to the next level really appealed to me. And I've got a separate television deal, so I get to kind of keep my foot in that too. And it was kind of one of those things where it's a great opportunity to grow. It's a great opportunity to get some, quasi management experience, and kind of in certain ways, like have more of a say in what I do, which I think almost anybody, once you get into your 30s, I feel like almost anybody wants to have a little bit more control over what they do.
Now, who's your the television contract with?
So it's Comcast NBC. So I'm doing. So I'm going to be co-hosting. This isn't really out there yet as much, but I'm going to be co-hosting a couple shows in the fall, and that's going to be announced soon. But it's some of the guys that I've worked with in Boston, and hopefully do some stuff with NBC in Connecticut, and it's a lot of different things, and it's gonna. The great thing about it is like I'm gonna get to do some hosting, which is like a little different than what I was doing at NFL Network, where for the most part I was a field reporter, which is I got great experience. Like I had 6 years of learning how to stand in front of a camera and talk, and not come off like a total jackass, who's scared shitless. Like I really learned how to do that. This is like a big component of this is going to be hosting, which is a totally different skill. And so, I just think it's like one of those things like where, in football, right? Like the more you can do, right? Like, so like this is one of those things where it's like, we like I said, we don't know where our business is going to be in 5 years, but I think like it's, the more you can do, the more valuable you are. And this is going to be like the way that my TV thing is going to be set up here. I'm going to learn to do some new stuff. So
as a guy myself who was trying to get into the broadcasting world, like how do you come across, say you're standing there, you're nervous, you're not really exactly sure what it's going to be, and they're going to come to you live in a minute, whether you're doing an interview or just a talk back, giving like a report. How do you, when you really are scared and nervous, how do you not let that come across the camera?
Well, this is going to, so when I was at the Globe, I was at the Boston Globe before I went to NFL Network, and that was a great job. That was the guy who I idolized in the business, a guy named Will McDonough, who was on CBS when I was a kid and was the NFL columnist for the Globe. And, it was a great job. I loved it. And I was doing TV on the side, and I thought it was the same thing as like doing TV as a job. And what I found out quickly when I got to NFL Network was it's not the same thing. And, I think that there's this process that you go through where at first you kind of sound like Mr. Announcer guy. You know what I mean? Like you sound like you're trying really hard to sound like you think people should sound on TV, right? Mm-hmm. And then what ends up happening is you kind of learn how to adapt your own voice into that. You know what I mean? And so you kind of come to a point where maybe people can't notice it, but it clicks in your own head where it's like, okay, I sound like myself again, if that makes sense. So you start to it starts to kind of like click in your head, and it just takes reps like anything else. It starts to click in your head, okay, like I don't sound like I'm really trying too hard to myself anymore. I'm starting to sound like myself. The other thing that really helped me, and this is a simple thing, a huge part of it for me was kind of like just coming to the realization how fucking stupid our jobs are. Like how dumb our jobs are. I mean, look, you played in the league for a long time, right? Like you're not the most vital employee in the United States of America to begin with, right?
Yeah.
And I cover you. Okay? So like my job is to sit there and talk about you. I mean, I think like a big part of it for me was, you really want to be. I've always really, really wanted to be good at this, and I don't think that you can be any good at it unless you really like it. So there's all of that. Like I love football; it's the only sport I ever wanted to cover. I was never near a good enough player to even harbor an idea of making money to do it, to play. So I played through high school, and but I really, really, really wanted to do something involved with it, and that's how I got into doing this. And so you start to build this in your head that what you're doing is really serious because you take it so seriously. Mm-hmm. I think like eventually when you have some success, you have to kind of come to the point where it's like, you know what? Like at the end of the day, I worked really hard to get here, but my job is really fucking dumb. Like it's really, and if I sit there and I take it too seriously, that's going to come off really poorly, you know? And so I think a big part of it, and I know it sounds simple, but it was like, for me, it was just like, I should, like, this is what I've wanted to do since I was 17 years old. There's a part of me that still should be that kid. You know what I mean? Like, this should still be that way. And so, and I think, you know what, I think one thing that's really helped, and this is, I mean, for me, it was huge, was like my wife's a nurse, you know? And so, like, she works in the cardiac ICU of a children's hospital, sees the most awful things in the world. Like, how in the hell am I going to think that I've got like that serious a job when my wife's going to work doing that? So I honestly think that was a huge part of it for me. It was just kind of recognizing that at the end of the day, our jobs are not essential jobs. Like, they're jobs that you really, really want to be good at it, but what you're doing is kind of stupid too, if that makes sense.
It does, and it has to be a tough line to toe, because what you're saying and the people that are consuming all of this content that you're putting out, they take it like it's life or death.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's like it does. Sometimes you do cross into real life, like the domestic violence thing 2 years ago, the Ray Rice thing, the Greg Hardy thing. You do cross into Aaron Hernandez. You do cross into real life, and so you kind of learn. You learn along the way, like, okay, like this is what I'm going to be serious about, and this is what's less serious. And I mean, I don't know. I think it's just, I think you just have to learn to have fun with it, and learn to, okay, like I'm going to outwork everybody, but in the end, in the end, I'm supposed to be having fun with this. And if I'm not having fun with this job, and I came to this conclusion a long time ago, like if I'm not having fun with this job, like why didn't I just go get a job I hate where I could be making, why didn't I go try to work for a hedge fund or go be a my dad was a stockbroker, like go be a stockbroker. Like if I wanted to live a life where I was going to be like miserable at work, there are a lot more lucrative fields than sports journalism to get into.
Yeah, and do you feel that now with your short time you've been at MMQB, that you are almost like unchained, or you don't have to worry about people breathing down your neck or have anything censored, and you can kind of be yourself?
Yeah, Peter's been really supportive when it comes to that stuff. I mean, like the story I wrote last week about like Clay and Julius and Harrison. I wrote basically that they should stand up to the league and tell the league to get lost. And Peter suggested that I write that, and so, I think that, I think the big thing is like, I just, for me, it was like, I like a lot of people can toe that line where, and it's hard to do, like it takes discipline to do it, but a lot of people can toe that line where they just can have an opinion on nothing. And that can be really beneficial because you offend nobody, so it becomes easier to get information. And like the guys who are really good at that, I've got all the respect in the world for them, because I'm somebody who can't keep his mouth shut, right? Like so, like I think that that's an admirable quality, to be able to play everything straight down the middle and not offend anybody. I've always kind of been somebody who's like I'm just different than that. And, I think part of it's like kind of recognizing who you are. And so I feel like I'm better at my job when I've got conviction about something I'm doing. And so it's just, like a lot of this stuff in our business, like some of it can be contrived and everything else. I've just always found that like, if there's a subject that I've got conviction on, I'm going to be better at my job, whether it's on the radio, on TV, or writing. Like I'm going to be better at doing those things if I'm doing something I have conviction on. And so I think having the freedom to express my opinion on stuff and everything else has kind of been helpful. And I'm still trying. I'm not there yet. I'm still trying to develop my voice in that way. But I feel like that's kind of where the ceiling's probably highest for me personally. For other people, like I said, they can play it down the middle and they can broker information, and that works for them. And I've got a lot of respect for people who can do that, because that's difficult for me to be able to play everything down the middle. I just like can't keep my mouth shut, and that's the way I've always been.
Can you think of any guys off the top of your head that are some guys that play it right down the middle?
Yeah, I mean, like Adam's great at it. There's no question. I mean, I think Adam Schefter is fantastic at it, and he's been passionate about certain topics. He'll come out and say certain things, but Ian Rappaport, somebody I got tremendous respect for. I worked with for a few years. I competed against in Boston. Jay Glazer's like a great, like no one in our business is better at building relationships than Jay Glazer. So those guys who have the insider roles. A lot of times you're in a position where it's like your job is strictly your job's strictly to report, and those guys are very very good at doing those things. I always kind of like viewed it as like, all right, there are things that I feel strongly about that I can't keep my mouth shut on, and all the rest. So it's I think for all of us, it's just you kind of figure out over time what you're good at and what you're not good at, and I like to think I'm pretty self-aware about what I'm good and what I'm not good at.
Now, that story that you referenced, telling Clay and Julius and James Harrison, Mike Neal to stand up against the league, could you have written that when you were still employed by NFL Network?
I doubt it. I mean, I like if I'm being honest about it. I mean, I've got tremendous respect for a lot of people there. And I think I had I had a great experience there. I got a lot better at TV. I worked with a lot of great people there. I don't think I could have written that now.
Would you now? What would the process have been though? Would you have written it and then submitted it, and it just wouldn't have ran?
No, I mean it doesn't work that way. I mean you run story ideas by people and everything else, and they'll say I think this is a good idea and that's a good idea. I mean, and that's like I said some stuff on the radio in Boston like a couple months ago, and people ran with it like oh, I was bashing X, Y, or Z. I really look at it as like when I said what I said, it was like does stuff get vetted? Well, yeah, stuff gets vetted, but your stuff gets vetted no matter where you work. You know what I mean? It's like you have an editor, you have an editor at NFL Network, just like you'd have an editor at the Boston Globe, just like I have an editor now at the MMQB, and I'm not going to go and. I mean, generally, I'm not going to go and write I'm not going to you wouldn't waste your time doing a story until you talk to your boss about it. You know what I mean? Because it's like if you had any doubt, like you would talk to your boss first, and so that conversation would probably happen on the front end, not on the back end.
Okay, I always wondered that, like how. So I had Mike Silver on here, and I was asking Mike about that, like how. That's always my question, because I know NFL Network is owned by the league and Roger Goodell, and it's technically the owners are the bosses. I mean, not day to day, but it's always a thing. And a lot of guys, you're one of the few guys that kind of spoke out and said, "Yeah, I couldn't be like as aggressive as I wanted in the stories that I would try to go after because you were an employee of the league trying to report on the league." So there's like a weird thing. You're one of the few guys that actually said. That wasn't the case. Like everyone else kind of says, well, no, we're good. They don't really ever censor me or stop me from doing anything. Were you able to do that because you already had another job lined up?
Well, yeah. I mean, at that point, at that point I was out the door. It was just like, and the way that whole interview happened. I mean, I've known those guys in Boston. I've done their radio show for 7 years now. So I know those guys really well. I regard those guys as friends of mine, and they had me on and they asked me the questions, and I felt, to some degree, like obligated is probably the wrong word, but I felt like the right thing to do was to answer the questions honestly. And I thought I was diplomatic about it. I just, to say that I'd never run into any sort of like roadblocks as far as doing stuff there, I would have been lying. You know what I mean? I did. And the experience that I had was different from, the start to the finish, and it went back and forth and everything else. And I mean, it's not the only place that has, that has conflicts of interest. I mean, there are other places that have partnerships with the league too, but I mean, I just was honest about my personal experience. I didn't mean for it to say like anyone else was had the same experience I did. It was just my experience that I was talking about.
And I don't think you didn't mention any names or call out any bosses or anything. So you were just saying in general. Yeah,
no, I mean, like, that's just my experience. You know what I mean? Like, there were certain things that I had, frustrations over, and it was just, I mean, it and most of the people, I think a lot of people that I a lot of the people that I worked with there knew that, but I mean, it's just, like I said, everybody's experience is a little bit different. And, I mean, I who knows, different people might have had a different experience than I did. But I just, like I said, I just thought the right thing to do, just like I'm being honest with you now. I mean, you don't want to throw anybody under the bus, and I've got like loyalty to a lot. Like there are a lot of people there that are still there that I really like and that I owe a lot to, but ultimately there were obviously reasons for leaving, and one of them was, like that's my ability to grow. I like there were certain ways where I felt like I could grow more if I left, and some of that had to do with the fact that I was working at a place that was, tied into the league. And it's just reality. You know what I mean? Like, it's nothing more than that. It's just reality.
When did you start to get that inkling or that feeling that you felt like you could grow somewhere else?
Well, I mean, I think it kind of like it's like anything else too. I think, the further I went along there, it was just, I wanted to test myself in different ways. And I started to think about like how that would manifest itself. And, me and Peter had talked like in the abstract about like, could this work out or could that work out down the line? And, I know he's somebody who's always been really helpful to me and really been helpful to a lot of other people in the business. And so, it was one of those things where we started talking and it was, God, like, maybe I don't need to jump from TV network to TV network. Maybe I can find maybe there is a way to grow outside of, the normal career path. Because I've been, and I was there for 6 years. I mean, I was on NFL Network for 6 years. So, the ability to kind of be a part of building something was really attractive to me. Like I said earlier, the control was attractive to me. And the chance to just kind of push myself in different ways was very obviously going to be there. And I think part of it was the control thing, like where I was never going to be in I mean, NFL Network, ESPN, those places are just too big for somebody who's a reporter to have that sort of control over what they do. And I thought that was a huge, huge plus for me, something that like really, really appealed to me, where I felt the ceiling on where I could go went through the roof.
It's almost like I don't know, do you guys consider like the MMQB, are you in like the same vein as like what Dan Patrick did when he broke off from ESPN and now he started his own gig and NBC, and also like the Ringer now with Bill Simmons, all that stuff?
I mean, I think the ones I compare to, I'd say the Ringer, Barstool, the Vertical, which is Woj's site. I think that this is the future of web journalism, is that you're going to have sites that are kind of built around one voice, and that like it trickles down. So, the voice, like what you're getting is kind of a reflection of that person. So for us, it's Peter. I think with Yahoo, it's Woj. With the Vertical at Yahoo, it's Woj. With Barstool, it's Portnoy. With the Ringer, it's Simmons. And I just think like that is. I think that's the future. I think that's where things are going, because, I think it's an on like everything people like people get everything on demand now, right? Like, so I want a certain thing, so I'm going to go to Netflix for a certain thing, and I can call up whatever I want. Well, I think that when you have like what these sites are able to do is kind of give you, all right, like, I really like one style of reporting, or I really like one style of writing, or I really like one style of comedy, or whatever it is. And I know I can get that here. You know what I mean? And so, Peter's always been really good at is access journalism. And so that's kind of part of what I'm trying to do with the video operation now. And that, like, I sat down with Bill O'Brien and he showed me 25 plays that explained why they signed Brock Osweiler without ever talking to him. So that was one of my video projects. Another one was I went, Tom House is working with half the starting quarterbacks in the NFL. So I went out to LA and I wired him and his coaches up and watched them work out Andy Dalton and Blake Bortles. So it's just like, the way that our site works is the same way I think a lot of these sites work, which is like you got to find okay, like there's a reason why Bill Simmons or Adrian Wojnarowski or Peter King or Dave Portnoy or whoever it is. There's a reason why people really like what those guys do. So you take what those guys do and you leverage it with different people. You bring different people and you hire different people, and you kind of leverage what they do well with a bunch of different people and create a whole site around that, whatever that person's style is. And I think it's a smart way to do it. I think it's where like sports journalism on the web is going. And, now I think it's on us to, all right, like, how are people going to consume this now? And so I think that's live video. I think that's I'm going out and doing these video projects that put storytelling in a package that the 16-year-old or the 21-year-old is more willing to consume than, say, a 4,000-word magazine story. So that's a challenge for all of us. I mean, I think the setup is right. I think finding a way to deliver it's really the challenge. And I know this. I think a lot about it. I think a lot about how we're going to do that and what the best way to do it is. And I don't know how that is yet, but I'm trying like hell to figure it out.
So I had Portnoy on here a couple months back. Did you ever look at joining their team?
No, I didn't look at joining their team. I'm a little too far down the path in my own. I'm on my own way, but I like honestly, I've got all the respect in the world for the thing they did. I mean, it's amazing. It really is. I mean, I live in Boston, and he jokes about the fucking blue boxes that were sitting on the street corner. I mean, when I was at the Metro West Daily News making $25,000 a year, and I was a 24-year-old kid, broke and like cobbling together enough money to go out and get wasted on Friday and Saturday nights, like outside my apartment, there was one of those blue boxes, one of those blue Barstool boxes, and so I mean, what they've done to come from that to where they are now, where I don't know, he's got a fucking mansion on Nantucket now or whatever, is pretty incredible.
It sounds like well, first off, a lot of these guys that you've mentioned all have Boston connections. You guys are all like Boston guys. Simmons, Peter King's Boston, correct?
Yeah, he's New England, but yeah close enough.
I don't know Wojnarowski, I don't know where he's from, but Portnoy, and they're building like a whole monstrosity in New York now that Chernin bought him, and he was explaining it to me. It sounds like everybody, or at least you guys are the ones that seem to be trying to be like ahead of the curve of this whole digital thing. Obviously, it's already on its way, and it's true. That's the reason that I think every network now is trying to figure out like what you do, because watching SportsCenter, no one's going to stay up till midnight to watch clips and watch highlights of the baseball games that were on that night because they're instantly on our phone.
Right.
So where is it going? That's the question everyone is asking. So I feel like is that what MMQB, you guys are always trying to think about, like how can we deliver this and what's the best way?
Yeah, I mean, I think the challenge for us is to be more reactionary, to act quicker. Because the way news is consumed now is much different than the way it was 10, 20 years ago. So, it's something happens, who can get to the information that concerns that the fastest, and who can consume it, who can be smart about it and digest it and then disseminate it to the public, who can give the best opinion on it quickly, all of that stuff, And so, how do you become a destination where people want to go? Like, so Andrew Luck signs a $25 million a year contract, or Tom Brady makes the decision to not go to the Supreme Court, or I'm just trying to think of big stuff that's happened. The Al Jazeera stuff happens. Josh Norman runs his mouth. Whatever it is, all the stuff that's happened. Well, where's the first place that people go? And like that's what the race is for now. And it's like the barriers that you have between TV and radio and print are now completely broken down. I mean, newspapers have podcasts and video. TV stations have websites where there's writing. Radio stations do video stuff, and they have a lot of the radio stations up here have hired writers away from newspapers. So, I mean, the lines in our business are completely gone, you know? So, and it's all become kind of one big race to be like, okay, all right, AJ, like, you know, something huge happened in the NFL. I don't know, like one of the top 5 quarterbacks breaks his leg, right? Like, so like you want to like our job now is to figure out where you're going and why you're going there. You know what I mean? Like what you're getting there that you really like, why you're going there because you know, like the way it's delivered, whatever it is, like we're trying to figure that out. Where with TV, I think it's a lot harder because like when you're on TV, people are conditioned to like, you know, like people are fucking lazy. So like they don't want to learn the new channels and everything else. So like they'll turn on their TV. That's what FS1 had such a problem with. It's like it's so hard to condition someone to go to their TV when something happens and not just default to ESPN, right? Mm-hmm. Well, with these and with the internet, I don't think people are as close-minded. You know, I think that people are more open to going different places to find stuff, and it's easier for them on these because there's just an app on their phone. Like if I can get somebody to download our app, well then, you know, now like we're right there in the running with everybody else. And so, you know, I think that like that's the big thing as far as like our little corner of all of this. You know, with the football, with what happens in football, you know, like it's just a race to be like I want us to be the go-to place for everybody to go when a bomb goes off somewhere. And you know, I mean, look, something happens in Boston sports. I mean, Simmons was the guy that a lot of people wanted to hear from for a long time, you know. And if you take like Deflategate was a great example. Like everybody wanted to know what Portnoy thought during Deflategate, right? He's selling T-shirts, doing all this different stuff. So like that's kind of where it is in my mind, at least, is like a bomb goes off somewhere, and none of us have any control over that, right? Like none of us have any control over what's happening in the NFL or anything else. And that bomb goes off. Well, where are you going? And you know, it's just kind of I like the way I feel right now for all of us. The challenge is to be relevant in a way where when something like that does happen, we're one of the places they turn.
So, are you ever truly off the clock then?
No. I mean, it's just. I mean, you aren't like it's. I always tell people like you live a way more normal life in the off season, and there are times when you're working, but you're not really, you know, I mean, you're just kind of waiting. You know what I mean? Like I always told people, I was like, you know, the most effective fucking journalism class would have been like just having everybody stand in a room for 4 hours and not telling them when something's going to happen, and then just have them react like that. You know what I mean? When something does happen, because it's just that's the nature of our business, no matter what. And this isn't just sports journalism. I mean, this is more serious journalism too. Is that like, you know, it's a lot of waiting. You know, it's just something's going to like you prepare yourself, and you know something big. So when something big happens, and this is why you have all those relationships and everything else. Is when something big happens, I can get someone on the phone. I can react. I can be smart about it. I've got the background knowledge to know why it happened. Whatever it is, all that stuff added together. Yeah, I mean, there's a huge part of our job that is, all right, like I have no control over what's going to happen. I'm just waiting for something to happen. And when it does happen, I better be fucking ready.
Wow. So you went to the Ohio State University.
Yeah.
Great. I'm a huge homer towards anyone Ohio State.
Well, you're like down the street from them right now, right?
Yeah. I'm 20 minutes about. So, and, Peter King is a Ohio University Bobcat, so you guys have that connection. And OU is a big like radio TV school. They're pretty highly respected, I know, when it comes to that. Yep. But like, what do you majored in journalism? Like, what do they teach you in journalism class? Honestly,
at Ohio State,
yeah.
I'll tell you what. The best thing about going to Ohio, the best thing about journalism, about majoring in journalism at Ohio State and wanting to get into sports reporting was covering you guys. I mean, I always like, and I think you were probably like an incoming freshman when I was leaving, but because I think that 02 class, like Clarette was there the spring of my senior year, but I like we honestly like in college we had more like I had to take more general education than almost any of my friends because there just weren't that many journalism classes, and most of like 3 of my classes were writing for the school paper.
The
So
Lantern.
yeah, Lantern. So
Yeah.
like one of my one like I spent one quarter because it was still quarters back then, just like it was for you. I spent one quarter covering the football team. Spent another quarter where I was a columnist for the school paper, and then I spent another. But then the third quarter that I spent at the newspaper was putting together like a special section for the spring game. So, I mean, like to me, like that's not class, and it didn't feel like class, but I mean, where are you going to get better experience than that? I mean, I was basically, I mean, as I was, it's not an NFL team, but it might as well be the way that it's covered. And I'm sure I mean, you saw that, right? Like when you were playing there, I can't imagine the amount of media you dealt with in college probably wasn't like the number of people that were covering the team probably wasn't that much different than like what you were facing in Green Bay every day. And it might have been less than what you might have had less media in Cincinnati than you had in Columbus, right?
Yeah, definitely at times. But
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about like access to players and to coaches
Yeah.
and stuff. Like, how was that? Because I know when I was in college, we had like 1 day a week. It was really nice actually as a player. We had like one day, and they weren't allowed in the locker room. So the locker room was actually like your place. You could feel safe, really. In the NFL, it's not that way.
Right.
You got to worry about reporters I've talked about on here standing behind you when you're trying to get naked and get in the shower.
Yeah.
But that has to be
It's not comfortable for us.
I was gonna say I always felt for some of the media guys during that. I'm like, man, this has got to be weird for you too, right?
Yeah.
But
It's not normal for anyone.
was the access that you got in college, like how different was that than you would have in the NFL?
I mean, the weird thing was that I was like in class with a lot of those guys. I mean, I was in a fraternity in college, so like I knew a bunch of the guys, and it was just it was definitely different. I mean, it's like and I mean, when you're in college, you're not being called upon to break news the same way or any of that too. So I mean, it's not the same. You get a taste of it. It's not the same as actually being a reporter working for like a big newspaper or television station or whatever. I don't know. I mean, like for me, it was just like I like the access in college actually kind of in certain ways it made more sense because you were on your own to build your relationships, and I thought like I think a lot of the stuff that we get in the locker room covering the NFL is kind of like I can go up and have a good conversation with the guy, but I could have that conversation with the guy down the street at the bar too. You know what I mean? Like, or I could find a different way to have that conversation with a guy where, like a lot of the stuff, like when I'm actually putting a reporter in someone's face, like it's the stuff you get out of there is not great. You know what I mean? So in college, it was more like you request a guy and like you get him, and then there was more order to the process. And I thought, like, I don't think it should be like that covering the NFL because there's just such demand for information. But I also don't know how productive that locker room period really is. I mean, I was always able to build, like, I just think you have, like, it's on us to find ways to build relationships with these guys. And the teams that I covered day to day, the Cowboys and the Patriots, the amount of media coverage that those teams had, like, it just made it so a lot of the stuff that happened in the locker room was just kind of like there wasn't a ton of benefit for anybody to it, So, I mean, I think there's a happy medium in there somewhere where it's just it was very different. There's no question about it. I think there's a happy medium somewhere where maybe you don't need to be up in these guys' business every day that way, but you can still kind of get what you need with which would be, I think, more than what they're given at the college level.
So when you worked for the Globe, were you a beat writer for the Patriots?
No, so I worked in 05 and 06. I was the Metro West Daily News and the Boston Herald. My suburban paper that I kind of got my start at was owned by the Herald, which was great for me because I kind of became like the backup beat writer at the Herald while I was there. And then I covered the Cowboys for the Dallas Morning News in 2007 and 2008. I was the Sporting News after that when they relaunched the magazine. Then I went to the Globe, and I was the national NFL writer there, which is basically, I mean, like you had Bob McGinn covering you guys in Green Bay. It was kind of like that, like where I was like like I was around the Patriots a lot, but my title was national NFL writer, and so I was more of like a football columnist.
Okay, so what does Greg Bedard do for the Patriots now? He was in Green Bay when I was there.
Yeah, and he was there. So Greg took my job when I left for NFL Network. Greg took my job. So Greg wound up replacing me there, and Greg's at SI now. So we're on the same team now. We actually went to the same high school. So I was with Greg's. I was actually a year under Greg's younger brother at our high school, and so I've known Greg for a long time. But yeah, so he was at MMQB, then he made the move over to the magazine. So he's working for Sports Illustrated now. But yeah, whatever it was, 2010, he actually replaced me at the Globe.
Okay. Now, what does Sports Illustrated consist of now? Do they still put out as many print, like actual physical magazines as they used to?
The pages, they put out as many magazines. The magazine isn't as thick as it once was, you know. So, okay. But I think that's the way it is with anything. I mean, like you look at newspapers. It's just like, I mean, they look like those little shoppers that you pick up at the grocery store versus what they used to look like. And I was actually in Cincinnati, I think it was like last year, and I couldn't believe how small the Inquirer was. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, I know the Dispatch is that way now too, right? I think like a lot of the newspapers are just like, they're like these little, like, they almost look like flyers, you know? So
do you think the newspapers are gonna just go away and completely?
I think that the printed product will go away. Like, I don't think there's any question that the printed product will end up disappearing. And my wife's back there. Sorry about that.
No problem. No problem.
She just gave me a funny look. I think the printed product will disappear. So, like, I think eventually you're not going to have the physical newspaper put in your hands. What my hope is, because I know newspapers to me are, like, I think, like, in a lot of ways, newspapers set the tone for ethics in our business and, like, the way you should do things. Like they don't teach that. I don't think they teach the lessons at a lot of websites, whatever it is, that they like just drill into your head in a newspaper. So the scary thing for me is, like, I think a lot of us came out of that newspaper world and we had that ingrained in us and we took that with us wherever we went. Like, if you don't have that, then I think that it's a problem for the business in general. So I think the ideal thing to happen, because I do think the printed product's going to wind up going away, I think the ideal thing would be, like, hopefully all these publications wind up finding a way to monetize things on the internet. And so you see the places have the same structure, the same people in place, the same ethical code that they've had forever. They just are doing it on the web instead of, in print.
Yeah, you just read it on your iPad now instead of having the guys throw it on your doorstep. Right,
which is what most people do now. I just think the challenge for them has been monetizing things on the internet. And the biggest mistake they made, there's no question about this, is that at the very beginning of all of this, they thought the newspapers, the dumbest thing newspapers did was they looked at the internet as a supplement for the newspaper when they were really the replacement. And so, I think that because of that, they made everything on the internet free. And once they realized they were wrong about that, people were conditioned to get all that stuff for free. And so you couldn't start charging them for it. Yeah. So they was so far gone that by the time they figured out, like, oh shit, like we're not going to be able to sell newspapers in 30 years. They couldn't charge on the internet. So I just hope they find a way. I hope they find a way to monetize the internet, where they'll be able to survive and continue to do a lot of the important stuff that they've done forever. Because the stuff that they do, and I know everybody saw Spotlight, and we can get corny about it or whatever, but there's a ton of important shit that, I mean, there's a ton of important shit in your hometown at, like, a town hall meeting that needs to be covered, that needs to have a watchdog on it, that, like, won't if newspapers go away.
Yeah, I think it'll just be delivered another way to everybody. Right. And like my dad, who just recently turned 60, I say all the time, like, when your generation dies, like, no one is going to definitely, I mean, there's no chance anyone's going to get a physical paper delivered to their house. But even he made the switch to getting like a subscription to the Dayton Daily News on his iPad years ago. I think he might get the Sunday paper delivered. I don't know.
Right.
But that's like, if you tell that to anyone younger than me, I'm 32 years old, they'll look at you like you're an alien. They don't even know what you're talking about.
Right.
If you explain like what the paper, well, yeah, it's a big physical paper, and you sit there and you uncrinkle it and you read it and you see what's out there.
Yeah, and like I still, it's funny because like I've always liked reading the printed, like a magazine or a newspaper. I've always liked that. But even now, I'm having a harder time doing it. And I'm somebody who's in the business, who's invested in newspaper. I just said all that shit about like how much it means to me and everything else, right? And even even me, like I have a hard time still reading it, to the point where like I'll literally go into another city and I'll buy the newspaper just because I think it's the right thing to do. I'm not shitting you, AJ. Like I won't read it. Like I'll buy it just because I almost feel like I'm not a hero for doing this or anything, but I feel like an obligation. Like I should pick up the newspaper, and then like it'll be I'll get wherever I'm going for work. It'll be sitting right next to me, and I'll be reading the same crap on my on my laptop or my iPad. So it's. I mean, I don't know if they can figure out how to make it work. I really hope they can.
Yeah, it's like supporting like the local mom and pop grocery store that got
Right.
run out by Kroger or any other big chain. You just want to
Right.
go there and buy a few things to keep them going.
Yeah, exactly.
I do that with there's like you can go to a farmers market. It's a little different, but how do you still have? So you're with MMQB now. Do you still have like a relationship with the Patriots, and do you still cover them?
Yeah. So I've that all got sorted out. I'm in good shape. Like I'm fine with them. I never. I mean, look, I've always looked at it this way. Like I think our job is naturally. You're gonna buy like our job, like what your job was as a football player, what a football coach's job is. Our jobs are naturally going to conflict, right? Like our jobs are naturally there are certain things that are part of my job that are going to run right into a football coach's job, an owner's job, whoever it is. Like that's just the way it is. Mm-hmm. And so, I've always done my best to not take any of that stuff personally. I just think it's important where, unless a guy really fucks you, you know what I mean? Like it's just, I just think it's really important to find a way to like make sure that if they take something personally, I realize that if I was in that person's shoes, I might be doing the same thing. And so, that's kind of the way I would approach the whole Patriots thing, the way it unfolded over the last year and a half. And I just, I honestly, part of the reason they carry that big a stick is because they're that good, and because they've won as much as they've won. They won their first championship. I was a senior in college, and I'm 36 years old now, and they've got the same quarterback and the same coach. And so you don't do that without doing a lot of things right.
Now, how for people that don't know, what exactly? I know the press conference thing. It was the on to Cincinnati.
Yeah, it was
deal.
the press conference thing.
But what did you? I don't know. Maybe I don't know enough about it, but it didn't seem like you.
I didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah, you just continued to ask Belichick questions.
I didn't do anything wring. One thing led to another, and I'd had some confrontations with him in the past, and we butted heads. And I think part of the problem was it kind of almost became like up here in Boston, because it's like I had my NFL Network career, I had my NFL Network thing, and then I have my local stuff here in Boston. So I do a lot of radio up here in Boston, and it's different here. I mean, here I'm asked for my while I was at NFL Network, I was asked for my opinion a lot more here. You know what I mean? Like it was more of a personality here and everything else, and so the confrontations between me and Bill almost became like a bit on radio, a bit on TV, and all of that stuff, and it kind of. It wasn't like I wasn't trying to generate that, but I think there were some people who kind of resented that I was benefiting from it in a certain way. You know what I mean? Like that it was like this was kind of building my profile a little bit, like that these things were happening when no one else was challenging Belichick. And so one thing led to another, and things went sideways there, and they were sideways for a while. And I don't think, I don't think the team intended for it to be that way. It was something that kind of just sat out there. You know what I mean? Like the team said something to somebody at my place, and then and then all of a sudden I'm not covering them anymore. And then, I was still like, I still talk to people in the building and everything else, but I, wasn't around them. And it's just like, the good thing is that once I got to the end of this past season and I knew that there were going to be some things changing, I was able to start to address it with people in the building, and it's behind me now. So it was a pain in the ass. It wasn't easy on my wife, that's for sure. But yeah, we wound up working it out. And like I said, I would never go in and say like, oh, like I'm going to be, a totally nice guy to you now and everything. And there wasn't anything like that. I mean, I just kind of explained my side, they explained their side, and that was it.
It's interesting, man. Like it reminds me of like the Greg Popovich deal. Like his thing has become like a bit where when he does any kind of interview, and it seems like him and Craig Sager are very close now, but he just has such disdain for the questions. But it's funny now. He's aware of it.
And the funny thing about it is that like to me like what's really interesting about it is if 10 years ago or 15 years ago, if I had one of these confrontations in a press conference, like I'm guessing it probably doesn't see the light of day. Like I remember having one. This wasn't even that long ago. I mean, this is like an 05, 06, whatever it was. And I got to know Mike Vrabel a little bit, and I'm sure you know Mike.
Oh yeah.
And what an asshole he is. And so it was one of these days. I'm 26 years old, and I was working myself silly at that point to try to like make it to the next level and everything else. And so I'm pulling these ridiculous 16-hour days, and I walk in the locker room, and there's a big scrum around Mike, and so I ask him some question, like I'm deliriously tired, and I ask him some question about it was something that just probably didn't make any sense about scheme, and he looks at me and he just rolls his eyes and he goes, "I'd like to know what you know about scheme," and I'm just sitting there, and like that never saw the light. No one ever saw that, you know what I mean? But today, if that happens, because there's like a lot of this stuff's broadcast live now, and because everybody's got their camera phones, like a lot of the stuff that like that sort of thing that happened, and I knew Mike was fucking with me, and we talked about it after and everything else. I that sort of thing would have been made into a bigger deal than it if that happens now. And so I think a lot of this stuff, like with stuff being broadcast live and press conferences are a TV show. That's not what press conferences were intended to be. You know what I mean? But they are. And for some reason, people are interested in these jobs we have and these interactions that we have with the athletes. So in certain ways, yeah, we've gone from being guys who, we go into these sometimes awkward situations and try to get information out of people and try to get content out of people to now, I mean, we're sort of part of the show, which is interesting.
It is. I'm sure there's like a weird thing with old school guys compared to new school. Do old guys feel that you guys shouldn't be a part of the story?
Yeah, and I don't think I don't think you intentionally try to be part of the story, but I mean sometimes it happens naturally, and I always thought that there are going to be times when it's going to be unavoidable in the environment that we're in now, and it's just a good example I think is my guy I work with, Robert Klemko, had the blowout with Des Bryant in the locker room last year, and I think that's one of those things that just never, that never sees the light of day 15 years ago. You know what I mean? Like that probably doesn't get out. Like that probably happens in the locker room, and what would probably happen afterwards is he gets made fun of by the rest of the reporters, and maybe some of the guys in the team come and give him shit about it, and that's it. Like now, it was on Twitter 5 minutes later. You know what I mean? Like that. We didn't have the ability to get information out that quick back then, So, I think part of it is we're probably more part of the show than we ever have been, but part of that is that all of this has become part of the show, because for one reason or another, people have an interest in these really weird, awkward situations that we get ourselves into in the locker room or wherever else.
Yeah, it just shows how popular football is. There's a reason we want to see every single thing. I myself played for 10 years. Like, I'm interested in that. I would watch a video of that of Vrabel saying that to you. And I know I've known Braves for a long time, but I would love to see that if someone had a clip of it. But we're I'm gonna wrap this thing up. It may
exist somewhere. I mean, you can I don't know. You can ask him. He motherfucked me pretty good, man. I was a 26-year-old kind of full of myself, thought I knew everything, so I probably deserved it.
Yeah, that's all right, man. I'm sure you weren't the only one. Braves is a passionate guy, that's for sure. I'm sure you'll cross him again when he becomes a coordinator and a head coach sometime down the road. But where do you want people to find you, man? Where can they go online to check you out?
Yeah, so I guess I should give all my social media accounts, right? Which is like at Albert Breer on Twitter, at Albert R. Breer on Facebook, at Albert Breer on Snapchat, at Albert Breer on Periscope, and so I mean, I'm telling you, that's been one of kind of the cool things about this job is I've really I was a little I think I was a little more hesitant to learn some of the different social media before. It was just all right, I'm on Twitter and that's enough, and I'll do a little bit on Instagram or whatever at Albert Breer on Instagram or at Albert_Breer on Instagram, and I didn't I wasn't really pushing myself with the other stuff, so I've learned Snapchat and I've learned Periscope and all this other stuff. So, and in fact, there's nothing that made me feel older than are you on Snapchat?
I am not actually on Snapchat.
Okay. If you ever get on Snapchat, there's nothing that'll make you feel older than Snapchat. Because the first time I opened it up, it was all these bright things and it was loud. So it's I looked down and I turned on oh my God, and I was I was around all these different people. It was the most embarrassing thing. And then I realized holy shit, this is the way kids are interacting now. Mm-hmm. So I must be 70 years old because I'm my dad now, looking at this and being God, this is loud and scary and confusing and get it out of my face, So it's been interesting learning about all those different things that I guess the 20-year-old or the 15-year-old are doing now.
That's good, man. All right, we'll check you out on MMQB.com and see all the video content you're putting out, and we're looking forward to it, man. Thanks. Hopefully you don't get hacked anytime soon, but if so, you've been through it once. You'll make it through it.
All right, thanks, AJ. Go Bucks.
Yes, sir. All right, Alan. Thanks, man.
We're glad you could join us for today's conversation. After you subscribe to the show, head over to thehawkcast.com or reach out to AJ directly on Twitter at @officialAJHawk to recommend future guests that will help us inspire people to keep talking. Thanks again, and we look forward to speaking with you next time on the HawkCast.